Hello and welcome to Casual Learning. I'm your host, John Bannon. Today I'm going to give a review of Chapter 5 of my newest book, God in Our Superdeterministic Universe, the number one argument for the existence of God. This book is available on Amazon Kindle. Chapter 5 is entitled The Multiverse of Madness. Now, when we talk about a multiverse, we're talking about the existence of other universes besides our own universe. Um, if you consider heaven and hell special other universes, then the idea of a multiverse is not that far into a Christian, because after all, heaven and hell uh, are outside the universe. So technically, they would be special other universes. But when I'm talking about the multiverse of madness, I'm talking about the existence of other universes like our universe, not special universes. Um, so, okay, is there any scientific proof that a multiverse exists? The answer is no. There's no proof at all that a multiverse exists, let alone an infinite multiverse. An infinite multiverse would contain an infinite number of universes similar to ours. So, is there any scientific evidence that a multiverse exists? And the answer is very little. Uh, what there is there is a cold spot that appears on the CMB map, which is the cosmic microwave background map. And some cosmologists interpret this as a result of a collision with another universe. However, you can just as easily explain this cold spot as a super void in space containing dark matter, or perhaps some other explanation. So it's certainly not conclusive evidence of the existence of another universe. And even then, that would only be one other universe, not an infinite multiverse, or even a multiverse with a significantly large number of other universes in it. The only other real scientific evidence of a multiverse is based on the theory of cosmic inflation, which is based on the a inflationary epoch of the early universe. Now, my video on chapter 4 explains why Dr. Hansen's version of superdeterminism disproves eternal cosmic inflation. But eternal cosmic inflation would involve an infinite number of universes in a multiverse. But you could still have cosmic inflation with a lesser number of universes than an infinite number. However, the theory of cosmic inflation relies on the theoretical existence of the inflaton field and the inflaton particle. Now, those that field and that particle will never be shown to exist in our universe because our universe is a decay of the inflaton. So by definition, the inflaton's not here. So you're never going to be able to scientifically verify its existence. So it's always a theoretical particle and field. And because you can never experiment on the inflaton field or the inflaton particle, you'll never be able to show what the actual properties are, such as the rate of decay of the inflaton or how quickly the inflaton field actually inflates. So you're never going to be able to make a scientifically verified determination of exactly how many other universes would exist in a multiverse caused by, let's just call it finite cosmic inflation. So it's a big question mark. Could there be cosmic inflation with some number of universes in a multiverse? Yes, it's possible. But you can't tell me how many other universes. So, for all intents and purposes, that theory really doesn't affect the existence of God whatsoever. In order to really question the existence of God, you would need a lot of other universes in a multiverse. Certainly, an infinite number where you cover every logical possibility for physical reality would be enough to say that, well, you're leaving God very little role to play, and therefore God shouldn't exist. But a finite multiverse with only a finite number of universes would still require a very large number of other universes to make a similar argument. And there's no way of knowing how many other universes would be in such a finite multiverse. So it's just unprovable speculation. It's a worthless argument against the existence of God. Um, there are also interpretations of quantum mechanics that predict a multiverse. For instance, there is the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The many worlds interpretation assumes that the pure randomness that appears to occur at the quantum level is a real thing. And in order to explain that randomness, so instead of saying, well, nothingness creates this random physical behavior, the many worlds interpretation says all possible physical realities do in fact exist. And it just so happens that you happen to be in only one of them. So it looks random to you, but all the other possibilities exist. So you just happen to be in this one because you have to be in one of them in order to uh, perceive it. Um, but that would mean that there's this possibly infinite number of other universes that do exist in order to explain the apparent randomness at the quantum level. Now, it's extremely extravagant to say that there's possibly an infinite number of universes just to explain the randomness that appears at the quantum level. But if you take that aside for a moment, superdeterminism disproves the many worlds interpretation. And the reason is because it relies on the actual creation of random particle behavior at the quantum level on a continuous basis. So it relies on the truth that there is such a thing as continuous causation, or there is something that needs to be explained as that appears to be continuous causation. And because Dr. Hansen's version of superdeterminism disproves temporal causation, then there is no uh, causative force, continuous causative force at the quantum level that needs explaining because it's not real. So, because the wave function isn't real, because it can't actually cause anything, because temporal causation is not real, then there's no reason to come up with a many worlds interpretation to explain that which isn't occurring. So, because purely random processes aren't actually occurring at the quantum level, there's no need to explain it using a many worlds interpretation. So, this is disproven by superdeterminism. Another interpretation of quantum mechanics is known as the transactional interpretation, and it claims that entangled particle pairs communicate with one another through uh, quantum substratum sort of mathematical waves that travel backwards and forwards in time from the points of their measurements to the points of their entanglement. So this interpretation uh, tries to explain how one entangled particle can know the spin of another entangled particle, even if they're a universe apart, by claiming that when the spin of one particle is determined or measured, waves get sent backward in time to when the two particles were just entangled. And then this wave tells this wave what to be, and then that wave travels forward in time to this particle in order to tell it what its spin should be in order to correlate 100% as just the opposite of this one. All right. Now, uh, that transactional interpretation also relies on a form of causation. It's sort of a quantum causation, not exactly done in time, but it's causation nonetheless, and it's a continuous causation. And Dr. Hansen proved that that sort of causation is not real. So the transactional interpretation is not real either. Plus, the transactional interpretation is an attempt to explain the spooky action at a distance between entangled particles. But the transactional explanation still can't explain Dr. Hansen's proof. It can't explain um, how it is that one particle can cause the spin of another particle, and yet that allow for 100% correlations on every measurement when viewed from different relative frames of reference under the special theory of relativity. So Dr. Hansen's proof also disproves the transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics. Now, there are interpretations of quantum mechanics that do not include temporal causation, such as the relational block world interpretation. And some versions of the relational block world interpretation um, are in purely static block realities without temporal causation. It's essentially a geometric explanation for change between hyperplanes of space time. Uh, Whether that is actually true or not, who knows? But what you can say is that such an interpretation would still require a God because uh, if the universe is just a block reality without temporal causation, then it still has to be non-temporally caused to exist for various reasons. The primary reason is that it's only one universe that exists out of 10 to the 10 to the 123 other possible permutations of the universe that don't exist. So, how do you explain why our one universe exists and all these other possible universes don't? The explanation requires that our universe be non temporally caused to exist, regardless of whether it's a block universe without temporal causation. So, this is non temporal causation, which is the bringing into existence or out of existence of a timeless physical reality, such as a block universe without temporal causation. Now, there's other things you can point to that evidence the idea or the existence of non-temporal causation. Um, Assume you have this block reality without temporal causation. You still have things in that block reality that need explaining through non-temporal causation. Uh, Strict determinism is one of those things. So in a superdeterministic universe where everything is generally strictly deterministic, there is an order among the abutting hyperplanes which is strictly deterministic. So that principle of strict determinism transcends the physical reality of these abutting hyperplanes, such that you can say that that principle organized those abutting hyperplanes. In other words, those hyperplanes must have been non temporally caused to exist in accordance with this transcendent principle of strict determinism. Other examples of principles that appear throughout a block reality, even a block reality without temporal causation, that uh, would have to be a transcendent principle upon which this block reality was temporally created, include all the fundamental physical force constants that are the subject of the fine tuning argument. All those things occur throughout the block reality, and the block reality would have to be non temporally caused in order to conform with those fundamental force constants. Another thing you can point to is the appearance of pure randomness. So the universe appears to have purely random processes at the quantum level. And this is demonstrated by experimental confirmation of violations of the Leggett-Garg inequality. So the problem is if you want to claim that only our universe can exist and none of these others are possible, then you've got a problem because there's an appearance of pure randomness in the universe. And there's no way that you can strictly determine a purely random particle behavior. So there's no way for you to show that the appearance of randomness in our universe is necessary, and therefore it's the only one that could appear, and therefore only our universe could exist. It's impossible to do that, which means that the appearance of randomness in the universe points to the non-temporal creation of our universe, because it points to the fact that other universes are possible, because there's no way to strictly determine these random appearances. So the appearance of pure randomness, as demonstrated by the Leggett-Garg inequality, shows that it is impossible that only our universe can exist because pure randomness cannot be strictly determined. One cannot demonstrate the necessity of purely random particle behavior. Um, so there's very little evidence of a multiverse besides a cold spot on the CMB. And just one other extra universe is not enough to make the case against the existence of God. You need an infinite multiverse that covers all logical possibilities for physical reality, or at least a very, very large multiverse to make this argument against God. And you're never going to have proof of that, period. Um, Moreover, this infinite multiverse, in order to be an argument against God, would have to consist of connected universes in a multiverse. In other words, universes that share a greater space. And the reason for that is if the universes in the multiverse are not connected, then there's no way to say that one universe coexists with the other one. because there's no connection. So how could you say that? If you're in this universe and it's not connected to this universe in any way, then there's no way for you to say that this coexists with your universe. So there's no way to prove it's even there. So if the universes are unconnected, then they would have to have some sort of creator reality, such as a god, from which they could both relatively exist compared to this creator in order to coexist with one another. But that proves the existence of God. So you would to argue against the existence of God, you need connected universes in a multiverse, and you need a very large number of them, or an infinite number of them. Now to the multiverse of madness. An infinite multiverse has absurdities associated with it. And it makes the whole proposition of an infinite multiverse dubious. First, it seems outrageously strange that physical reality should needlessly repeat itself an infinite number of times. So, in an infinite multiverse, everything that is logically possible happens. And it happens an infinite number of times in an infinite number of universes, identical universes. So, the extravagance of an infinite multiverse is just frankly too strange to believe. Why would that ever be the case? Isn't one universe enough? But you got to have an infinite number of the same copy of the same universe? That's unbelievable. That's absurd. Unbelievably extravagant. Second, in an infinite multiverse, everything that can logically happen does happen somewhere in an infinite multiverse, and it happens an infinite number of times. So even the absurdly ridiculous must occur somewhere in an infinite multiverse and an infinite number of times. So, if the infinite multiverse is real, then in some infinite number of multiverses somewhere out there, you were thrown into a live volcano as a sacrifice to island gods, but saved in the nick of time by Mr. T, hanging from a helicopter, lowering a gold rope chain to save you. Now, because that's logically possible, it must actually exist and happen somewhere in an infinite multiverse. It's absurd if you believe that that actually happens somewhere in an infinite multiverse. It's absurd. Third, an infinite multiverse means that there's an infinite number of you. Not only that, every possible logical permutation of you and your behavior exists somewhere and is repeated an infinite number of times in an infinite multiverse. Which means that if there's an infinite number of universes where you're the worst human being who has ever lived, you make Hitler look like a schoolboy. And there's also an infinite number of universes where you're the greatest human being who ever lived. Mother Teresa isn't worthy of carrying your sandals. So, I don't know what you believe about yourself, but if you believe in an infinite multiverse, there are universes where you're just the worst human being who ever lived, the worst mass murdering, horrible person that ever existed, and also the greatest saint that ever existed. But there's a lot of bad versions of you out there. So, um, the infinite multiverse also makes the idea of hell look like um, a garden party, frankly. Because in some universes in an infinite multiverse, there have to be people who have scientifically discovered how to avoid death. So they live forever, essentially forever. Whether that's biologically forever, or maybe they upload themselves to a computer or something like that. But somewhere that has happened. And somewhere people are living forever, and they are being tortured by other people who are also living forever in the most depraved manners possible. And those people being tortured are not just evil people, but also good people, saints even. Now, in hell, at least, only the evil are tortured. But in an infinite multiverse, there's an infinite number of places where even the righteous and the great people, the good people of that universe, are being tortured forever in the worst ways possible by other people forever, or practically forever until their universe ends and they stop existing. But because that's logically possible in an infinite multiverse, it must occur. So think twice before you buy into the infinite multiverse or a very large multiverse, because the absurdities abound in that. Um, so that's my recap of chapter 5. Chapter 6, the next video is going to be on everything is predetermined. So I hope you learned something, and I'll see you again.